Hello YouTube, I'm doing here a rebuild on the Belarus-520 or the MTZ-52 for those that don't live in the States. And I run into some issues with the power steering. Now, granted, I could have just left it as it was, but the problems that I started having was the tractor would just lean towards the right and I would have to always hold the steering wheel so it wouldn't lean. And I was thinking maybe my alignment is off or something else is going on, but since I needed to replace the radiator anyway, I had to run into some really well, I took a lot of things apart and then I discovered these things. Now, first and foremost, this actually is the older style power steering unit for the 500 series, and I'm going to say this, I took it apart because there was there were some minor leaks here and there, but the real main issue was that this collar here, which is to actually adjust your worm gear lash with the main sector or on the power steering, but the real problem here was the splines that come out were so worn that I had slack here and here. So pretty much from this keyway to here, there was just tremendous slack. And this here is also a good time to talk about some of the common faults that these power steering units have. Now, my issue was not only was this here broken, but the splines for the worm shaft that goes in here. Let me just find one. Now, here's the old worm shaft that was inside this collar. Now, if you look at the splines, you can see this has been heavily worn towards one side, and all the splines with the steering knuckle were both really worn. Now, this tells me that this machine had alignment or slack adjustment issues a long time ago. And this has been going on for years. Like somebody had shimmed this in the collar in order to get the slack off, but you actually are not supposed to put any shims inside the steering knuckle because this moves forward and backwards in the steering knuckle. So the steering knuckle is this long and you don't want any debris or anything inside there to pretty much stop this from moving freely. So that was the one and major issue I took it apart. Now, for the question, how do people break off this collar? Now, this is the collar for the worm shaft that I showed you. But hear me out. This here has a O-ring. Let me get it off. Now, this O-ring seizes into the housing, and when people try to adjust this, they actually pound this with the hammer, and because this is cast iron, it just breaks off like it's just pretty much nothing. And if you're ever installing it back, you have to actually take the front. In the front here, there's actually an adjustment and a valve inside here that you have to take off first before you can actually slide this side out. Now, it only comes out this way, so if people don't know that you have to take the adjustment nut with the other unit off, you pretty much will just pound this to pieces. And while installing this back, make sure you put the new O-ring here. And this is actually, I think, a special size O-ring. I may be mistaken. I don't know really from my head the measurements, but if you're putting it back, make sure that the housing is clean and some tire lube or lubricant, because if you later want to adjust the slack by turning this, like that, you don't want to pound on any of these flanges. Like, this is a very typical thing I find. Flanges are broken. That means somebody else has tried to do something and because it was so seized up, they just broke it. Now, for the major issue with this entire power steering unit. Now, I had some funky issues that this thing would want to lean towards the right. And when I took it apart, I was thinking, well, maybe there's something else. But the first thing I noticed it was that the sector wouldn't come out. It would always stick on this side, despite I'm having the pitman arm right in the center. So I went there and took off the pitman arm and took the vertical shaft out, and look what I found. Let me show you, because you'll want to see this. Now, this here is the original pitman arm that came off, and there's two versions of these. This should be the version that the four-wheel drive 520s use. The 500 has a completely different pitman arm. They can be interchanged, but they won't fit because, well, there's some obvious clearance issues underneath, so you do need the right pitman arm for the right tractor. That means if you have a four-wheel drive tractor, you need a different pitman arm. And these are different. Now with this pitman arm, I noticed it's, well, really crooked. Like, I don't know how the heck people managed to scuff this, or, you know, this one has been gas heated by someone, and, well, it's crooked. And if you look at it like this way, well, yeah, I mean, obviously the tractor was leaning towards one side because it should be all straight, but this one's so bent that I don't know. Like, I would not reuse this. But here's the other catch. This is the shaft, the vertical shaft that came out from that steering bolster. Now I'm gonna put this one on, and I don't know if you can see this from the video, but the splines in the pitman arm and on the vertical shaft are completely worn out. And I do have another shaft that has, well, some funky issues as well. I mean, it goes to the splines really tight, way too tight even. But let me show you if I can get it there. Oh my god, doing it by one hand isn't the most convenient job. Oh no, well, you see here, I mean, it does go to the splines. You always want to have the pitman arm right on the top and no slack underneath here. But this one also does not only have vertical adjustment issues, it also, the splines on this pitman arm are so gone that even the better shaft that I have is just unusable. Now, I was considering just throwing it together, but the original shaft that came out, well, I mean, this surfaces where the bushings right in the bolster are okay, but the splines are gone. This one has good splines, but if I turn this one around, well, you can see it's all pitted, and I mean, a JB weld would do the job and seal the surface up, but then again, the bushings inside that bolster are just so far gone that I would need to replace those as well. Now, I had a bit of a thought how I'm going to tackle this problem anyway, and let me tell you what I found. Now, I could actually go and buy another vertical shaft and another pitman arm. That's about $100 something for those people who live in the United States and Canada. But then again, there's some other issues. I have worn bolster bushings inside this housing, and the more I look at it, the more I'm leaning towards just buying another power steering bolster with everything in it. I do have to watch out that I don't buy another one that has a pitman arm completely wasted. So even if that pitman arm is not the correct one, the pitman arm itself is around $30. That's not a big deal for me. But the real issue was that rebuilding this or buying another one, good used one, because this one was leaking, and the more I look at it, it just is easier to just swap out another one and take a risk and hope for the better. Because if I throw here parts, it's gonna cost me at least $250 to $300 if this bolster will be in a serviceable condition. The other problem I had was, well, this thing is really heavy, and if I'm going to buy another bolster, I'm going to have to hire some helpers, because I'm not going to even try to lift this out myself. I mean, this one will go out pretty easy because all it has is these 6 mounting brackets here, and that's about it. But the real issue is, yeah, gravity would just pretty much leave it on the ground. But the other one, yeah, this thing is really heavy, and it's a 2-man job to lift it. So I'm leaning towards just buying another one to at least get rid of the alignment issues and to get something that actually works. This one, I would say, well, it's not too gone, but the cost of the rebuild is just right now not feasible. But I'm going to keep this one for its sake, because all the newer tractors after the year 2000, all the Belarus tractors came with a different power steering set. So they got rid of this front bolster entirely, and the power steering is by an external hydraulic cylinder. And for that, they also have mounting brackets and mounting bolts on the front axle. This one doesn't have, it's the older style. So I'm keeping this part, but I'm leaning towards changing out the entire front bolster, because I'm not really sure that this one, I mean, it worked, but if I throw this together with these really worn and not great parts, I may just screw myself in the end. But let me know in the comment section, what do you think would be the best solution here? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. So anyway, I'm going to do more dismantling, and hopefully next video we see another steering bolster here. See you all soon.